an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Robopocalypse, Part 4, Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Transhuman, Call to Arms, The Cowboy Way, Awakening, The Veil Lifted, and Odyssey. In these chapters, we get to find out exactly what the deal is with Matilda's eyeballs and what she can do. We get to see Mikiko start a revolution. And we get to see from the perspective of a robot that's waking up and achieving sentience and self-awareness. And it's kind of sweet. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Krista for commissioning this episode. Krista is here in the chat. These chapters, it was 50 pages total for this entire part. So the chapters are pretty short, but there is a lot going on here. So I have had to kind of rush myself towards the end of the sections this past 2 episodes probably. So I'm going to do my best to really stay on top of that shit and not let this happen. So the first chapter, Transhuman, is told from Matilda's perspective. And she and Nolan get basically there's an explosion that it seems like they escape from without much problem. And then they continue walking, and she asks him if he's okay, and he's shaking. And she notices that there are these tiny splinters of metal in his back. We don't actually, I don't think, specifically find out what's going on with him, but later on, it's made clear that wherever they penetrated, he can potentially die. Probably will die if something isn't done about it. And so I have to assume that either his spine was hit, although he's able to walk for a while after, so probably an organ. But there's not much to be done here. And they have to continue on until they find someplace safe to go. So she is talking about how her brother is being really brave, but he can't look her in the eye anymore. It's too hard for him. And in a weird sort of parallel to him not really wanting to see her, she can't actually see him properly anymore. It says, I can't really see Nolan anymore, only the heat from his breath, the muscles in his face, and how he won't look me in the eyes. And this whole thing it turns out, it weirdly comes in handy because this is part of the way that the robots work with tracking potential prey down. And I'm calling them prey. I hate using that word because for me, the idea of prey means that it's a sustainable, you're doing this to sustain your own life. But that's not actually what it necessarily means. It just means that you're some kind of predator and you hunt. And that's what the machines are doing. So I think it's fair. And it does come in handy that she's able to turn this around on them. Also, later on in, I think, the Cowboy Way chapter, Cormac realizes about the heat-seeking thing, because this is evidently a newer development. I don't know if all of the machines were able to do this immediately, or if it was the kind of a feature that got introduced to a lot of them as time went on. There is a mention of the aluminum foil covering the windows being part of what helps keep the heat inside when we are in Mark and Dawn's apartment. So maybe they were able to do it really early on. But regardless, so let's see, I'm trying to find the spot. The closer we got to the really tall buildings, the more I could feel them. The machines, hiding in dark places, are running through the streets on the lookout for people. Some of the lights blinked regular every couple minutes. Those are hiding machines checking in with their bosses. I'm still here, they say, waiting. I hate these machines. They make traps and then wait for people. It's not fair. A robot can just sit and wait to hurt somebody, and it can wait forever and ever. But Nolan is hurt, and we need to find help fast. I steer us away from the trap makers and the travelers. But my new eyes don't show me everything. They can't show me people things. Now I only see the machine things. It's dangerous to be people blind. Yeah, that does feel like it's a problem. Being able to see the people is certainly, like, the way that she does, I find really fascinating. But yeah, they're able to set certain kinds of traps because they know that the awareness of the machines is limited. So if they make things confusing enough and irregular enough, then that could potentially, be a problem for her also. So at this point, she feels something is coming, and there's this like vibration. And she sees a pair of hands, and it's so the way she says it, I see a pair of warm human hands. And there's something so creepy to me about that like, that's the way that she sees now. The warmth is the first thing. And this woman fires on them because she initially thinks that they're a machine. And then she immediately is like, oh shit, sorry. Hey guys. But she doesn't react poorly to seeing Matilda's eyes, which I was a little worried about. And it turns out this is Dawn, Mark's wife. And Dawn brings them into their, sort of like underground tunnel area. And Matilda says that it feels safe, but that Dawn tells them a lot of the newer machines can dig really well, so you still have to be pretty quiet because the vibrations of the sound can be picked up on, which I just really hate that these machines are just like able to adapt to everything so quickly. Like, adaptation is something that a lot of times humans get huge credit for, because of our nature with building things. And, necessity is the mother of invention. But I feel like our adaptation is much slower. These machines are just, it's been a few months, I think the timing for this one is like 1 year out. And they're able to dig. They've got the boil bug things going on. There's it just feels so unfair. They're so accelerated, I check the walls around us for vibrations. I don't see any of the familiar pulses rippling through the soot-stained tile. Dawn looks at me funny when I tell her that nothing is in the walls right now, but she doesn't say anything about my eyes. So eventually, she holds the spike that she says looks like a bug leg. Dawn says she calls it Crawly Rob instead of a mantis. And she's holding it, and it responds to her mental orders, essentially. The leg doesn't have to think about where it goes either. Each piece is designed to work together. The leg only has one move, but it's a good one that combines stabbing and clawing. That's lucky for Dawn, because a simple electrical pulse can make the leg extend or curl up. She says it's very useful. The spike jerks around in my hands, and I drop it on the ground. It lies there for a second, still. When I concentrate on the joints, the machine stretches itself out slowly, like a cat. And this is when Dawn takes her over to see the machine that it's a copy of the kind of machine that took Dawn's eyes away, or, Matilda's eyes away. And understandably, Matilda has a pretty extreme reaction to this and falls down, scrabbles away, screaming. Yeah, you think? I was sort of curious, actually, because, like, at the time of this operation that happened to her, it sort of felt like she didn't know what was going on. So I admit I was a little startled to realize that she would even recognize the machine at all, because I felt as if it seemed like she wasn't, like, she must have been, because she was awake, right? When her mother came and was like, hey, get up. There was no wooziness. There was no indication that she had been knocked out at all. So she must have been fully conscious for the whole thing, but not feeling anything or not sensing what was being done to her, which is really weird. And there's this line, I never knew how much I needed to cry until I had no eyes. And later on, if I could close my eyes, I would. I said last episode, I was talking about if I could, like, had to choose a body part to be improved upon using technology and getting something substituted with, like, a robotic part, that I would choose my eyes, because I could blink and it would still look fairly normal. But if she can't even blink and close her eyes, that's, like, really so creepy. I just, that was what I cited as a thing with making actors feel a little bit off, is that they blink less or not at all. And if she can't blink, plus she's got these crazy eyes, yep, there's no getting around it. You are just going to look fucking bonkers. Like, that sucks. So finally, after she calms down, Dawn is like, okay, look, here's the thing. People dragged this machine down here, died doing it, because it can do these amazing things. It can operate on people and save lives, but we don't know how to use it. And she says, the machine on your face is also in your brain. You made that spiker move by thinking about it, didn't you? Can you try to do the same thing with the auto doc to save your brother's life? And that's really what I think, if it hadn't been for Nolan being hurt, I don't know if Matilda would have been as receptive to this suggestion. And when she hooks up to the auto doc, there is a moment of realization that this thing, because it's not online, doesn't have instructions on how to proceed. And it's wild because she's able to simultaneously sense the crowd of people around her. She can, notices them standing in a semicircle, and yet she's also interpreting the data that is flooding into her mind. The words were in my mind as if they were scrolling across the inside of my forehead. Trying to find where this thing begins. And this is where she meets Tom, who she says is actually pretty cute. And I was just like, oh, okay, word. And he's the one that has the giant scissors instead of a hand. I note, looking harder at the other people, I notice occasional bits of metal and plastic. Not all of them are made of meat. Some of them are like me and Tom. And he touches her eyes and realizes that what was attempted on her is actually incomplete. Her mother stopped the operation before Rob was able to hobble the implant, basically. He says there's no governor on it. There's no telling what she can do. And she gets handed, it takes a little while to convince Marcus that this is going to be okay. But she needs an antenna to get the instructions. And I thought that they were going to hook the auto dock up. But what they do is they use her as like the modem, like kind of, where she takes this antenna and a tidal wave of information comes flooding into my head, into my eyes. Streams of numbers and letters and images filling my vision. None of it makes sense at first. Swirls of color blow through the air in front of me. That's when I feel some kind of mind, an alien thing stalking through the data, searching for me, calling out my name. Matilda? I don't like that at all. I really, really, really don't. Okay, she had already been targeted from the start by Rob because of her proximity to her mother, I guess. This on top of it with her eyes and it just like trying to find her, I just, nope, don't like it. I'm getting dizzy as the information surges into me. The monster calls for me again, and now it's closer. I think of those cold, dull eyes that night in my bedroom and the way the lifeless thing whispered my name in the darkness. The colors spin around me like a tornado. Stop, I think, but nothing happens. I can't breathe. Stop! I drop the antenna like a snake. The colors fade. The images and symbols drop to the floor and are swept away like fall leaves into the corners of the room. The vivid colors bleach away into the dull white tile. I take one breath, then two. The auto dock legs start to move. And it begins to get to work. Apparently, her tapping in got adequate information for this thing to function. But it seems like Rob was on its way to find her. And it doesn't seem like it got her. I feel like if it had, something else would have happened. But it is aware of her and what she has access to, it seems. And I just don't care for that at all. In the sudden quiet, I can hear something beneath the static of the tiny motor noises. It is a voice. Sorry for what I've done. I'm called Lurker. I'm bringing down the British Telecom Tower communications blockade. Should open up satellite access, but I don't know for how long. If you can hear this message, the comm lines are still open. The satellites are free. Use them while you can. The damn machines will... no. Christ, please. Can't hold on any longer. I'm sorry. Catch you in the funny pages, mate. After about 10 seconds, the broken message repeats. I can barely hear it. The man sounds very scared and young, but also proud. I hope that he's okay wherever he is. So she tells them about this, and everybody is like, holy shit, this might change everything. And Dawn asks, finally, what else do you hear? What's the most important message? And she can hear a variety of things. But the one that she says catches her attention the most because it's familiar is Robot Defense Act. Matilda had only scratched the surface of her abilities. In the coming months, she would hone her special gift in the relative safety of the New York City underground, protected by Marcus and Dawn. The message she was able to find on this day, due to the ultimate sacrifice made by Lurker and Artrad in London, proved instrumental in the formation of a North American army. Matilda Perez had found a call to arms issued by Paul Blanton and the location of humankind's greatest enemy. So then we get Chapter 2, Call to Arms. The following message originated in Afghanistan. It was intercepted and retransmitted worldwide by Matilda Perez. We know that thanks to her efforts, this communication was received by anyone in North America with access to a radio, including scores of tribal governments, isolated resistance groups, and the remaining enclaves of the United States Armed Forces. Headquarters, Afghan Resistance Command, Bamiyan Province, Afghanistan. 2. Survivors. From Paul Blanton, U.S. Army. We're sending this message to urge you to use whatever influence you have as members of a surviving North American human stronghold to convince your leadership of the terrible consequences which will be suffered by all humankind if you do not immediately organize and deploy an offensive force to march against the robots. Recently, we have discovered the location of a super-intelligent machine that calls itself Archos, hiding in an isolated location in western Alaska. Coordinates are integrated at the end of this message. And then he talks about the evolution of the machines and the things that they have seen changing and the discovery of this research sort of, what's the word I want? Unit, I guess? March cautiously, as Archos will surely sense our approach, but rest assured that your soldiers will not march alone. Similar militias will be mustered from across human-occupied territory to do battle with our enemy in its own domain. We can guarantee, unless every human stronghold in range of Alaska retaliates, this reign of autonomous killing machines will increase manyfold in complexity and fury. Which, when you first read it, you're like, sweet, they're giving a lot of information, this is very helpful. And then it's followed up with commentary from Cormac. It is widely believed that these words, translated into dozens of human languages, are responsible for the organized human retaliation that began roughly 2 years after 0 hour. In addition, there is deeply dismaying evidence that this call to arms was received abroad, resulting in a largely undocumented and ultimately doomed attack on Archos mounted by Eastern European and Asian forces. God damn it. Can't we have anything nice? So, then we go to chapter 3, The Cowboy Way. And we are back in Cormac's POV. I was right about the fact that he is into Chera, and that comes up several times here. And he is here with Lark Ironcloud, who's wearing this like outfit. I'm going to read this. A black and red scarf is tucked under a half-zipped jacket. His pale green pant legs are folded into polished leather cowboy boots. Black goggles hang around his tawny neck. He's holding a walking stick with feathers hanging from it. The stick is made of metal, some kind of antenna he must have snapped off a Rob Scout walker. And it's weird because, like, when this is described, Cormac is like, man, I feel like I look like shit next to this kid who's so polished, and he calls it like almost a uniform. In my head, that all sounds like it looks crazy together, you know? That sounds like the kind of outfit that I would have seen on One Piece. And there's nothing wrong with it. We're in a fucking apocalypse. Wear whatever works, obviously. But it was just surprising to me that Cormac is like, made me feel a little bit self-conscious about my own outfit. And I was just like, why? It's fine, dude. Whatever. So they are standing with, it's him and Chera and Tiberius, and they are all together. And let's see. Oh, right. So he says, I think we'll go to war. Maybe. Lonnie Wayne's on it. He'll let us know. You trust him? He's the reason I'm alive. Oh. I don't know why that O was so funny to me, but it was so funny. Just, oh. Like, I mean, what do you say? I guess O is gonna take care of what you need to say. So at this point, he's like, hey, what the fuck is that? He looks out over the plain, sees the sinuous, glinting metal writhing through the grass like a hidden river. Lark spits tobacco on the ground, turns, and motions to his squad with the walking stick. That's our war, brother. So this turns out to be the first time that we encounter these, I'm going to call them boil bugs from now on, because they just remind me so much of the N.K. Jemisin bugs. And I think he calls them stumpers, but I don't like it. Boil bugs I like better. So Krista says he came up with it first. Doesn't matter. I read the other thing first. That's what it is. But yeah, this thing is their first encounter with them. It takes not very long before Cormac realizes what it is that they're seeking out, and that it's heat, and they come up with the plan to use a fire to distract the bugs and get them to basically commit suicide by jumping into the fire, because that's what they're after. And the way that, like, the scene in which he comes up with it, Lark is tangled in these ropes on Houdini, which is one of the big tank things that they have domesticated, for lack of a better word, that they have reappropriated. And Jack is up there trying to help Lark get free, but also they're being swarmed by the bugs. And he is simultaneously like, if this damn thing could stand still for long enough, I'd be able to get him free. But also, if it stands still, the bugs are just going to overwhelm us in like a minute. So that is when Cormac is seeing this. And I love that as this all happens, he's watching Jack. And he is so admiring of his brother. It just comes up several times where you can tell that there's a little bit of a hero worship thing there. And he calls his brother a hero and just generally is like, well, obviously, whatever the right thing to do is what Jack is going to do. And I assume Jack's going to die because of the way that there's a thing a little bit later, I think Odyssey is the chapter, where we're seeing this photograph, and I assume it's Jack in the lead because he just seems like the leader of this group. It seems like most people are willing to defer to him. And I feel like it was mentioned that he doesn't make it, but that his like quick thinking saves a lot of his people. I might be wrong about that, but I just assume because of these reports are being made by Cormac and not Jack, I feel like if Jack had been around, all of this, what's the word I want? Documentation, I guess, would have been done by him. And, you know, on the one hand, that's a bummer because Jack obviously was able to do a lot of good in helping people. But on the other hand, it does seem like perhaps not having Jack there to fall back on caused Cormac to have to step up, which can happen, you know? And that's not to say that like, oh, it's good that so-and-so died. But you are put to the test sometimes, and you can get complacent, or at least you can get... Complacent is a bit of a harsh word. I don't really mean that. But you can get so that it's very automatic to be more passive because you are so used to another person stepping in and having the better idea. So you try less to step up because you are so used to not being as good at this that eventually it becomes like kind of a habit. And I feel like this is a thing that I have seen in myself, you know, where I will get really used to another person kind of being on top of things. And then when it's time for me to do it on my own, I'm suddenly like, oh my God, I never really thought about how this even works. What? So I guess we'll find out, but I'm trying to find this spot. Okay. So yeah, the dude, there's the first guy who gets attacked and Chera is helping him with his injury. It's pretty bad. And they get him like evacuated from the area. They get cornered for a little bit and they're just like firing their guns like crazy. But there's a lot of these fucking things. And eventually Lonnie on the walker comes up and he's able to like shoot a ton of them because they have shotguns. So that spray is wider and he's up on the walker, which gives him a lot of room to aim and get a group, like groupings of them. But nevertheless, this is when, let's see, a stumper that somehow gotten behind us is climbing the metal of Lonnie's tall walker leg. He glances down, then leans in the saddle in a way that causes the leg to raise up and shake. The stumper flies away into the underbrush, where it's promptly blasted by one of my squad. Why didn't the stumper trigger? And this is what leads him to finally realizing that it's about heat. So he, you know, says that they need to light a fire. Start a fire and it won't stop, he says. Might kill our stock. It's that or Lark dies. Maybe we all die. Because basically when he says start a fire, it's not like, let me go and get some brush and some logs and it's like, no, take this fucking lighter and toss it into the prairie and start a fucking wildfire. And that's what they do. I toss the lighter into the grass, and within seconds, a raging fire begins to grow. The squad retreats to the other side of the clearing, and we watch as one by one the stumpers drop off the spider tank. In that same idiotic clambering motion, they jounce over the chewed-up ground towards the sheet of flames. Finally, Houdini stops bucking. On groaning, overheated motors, the machine settles down. I can see my brother's hand silhouetted against the sky. Thumbs up. Time to go. Out of nowhere, Shara grabs my face with both hands. She pushes her forehead against mine, bopping our helmets together, and smiles wide. Her face is covered in dirt and blood and sweat, but it's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. You done good, bright boy, she says, her breath tickling my lips. Somehow my heart's beating faster right now than it has all day. Then Shara and her flashing smile are gone, darting away into the grass for our retreat back to Grey Horse. 1 week later, Grey Horse Army heeded Paul Blanton's call to arms and mustered a force to march on Alaska. Their fearless response likely occurred because none of the soldiers truly understood how close they had come to utter destruction on the Great Plains. Post-war records indicate that the entire battle was recorded in great detail by 2 squads of military-grade humanoid robots camping 2 miles outside Grey Horse. Mysteriously, these machines chose to defy Archos' orders and did not join the battle. Mysteriously indeed, but we find out pretty quickly what the deal is with that. I don't know if we know, like, the details that we get from the Veil Lifted chapter. I don't know if that means that those are the robots from that chapter, or if they just happen to be, around, if it's just like circumstantial. But yeah, so let's go into Awakening then. Takeo Nomura. I had said before that for me, Takeo Nomura was like one of the less interesting sections for me of the book. And I think what it is that it feels he feels like a sort of he's almost feels like a superhero, there's something so over the top about his proficiency. And yet I know that there are people out there like that. So and I don't mean just with like robotics. I just mean in general, there are people out there for anything that you can select that just have this proficiency and ability that it's like, what? Are you a robot? What the fuck? So it's not exactly the fact that it feels unrealistic. It feels almost a little too easy, but it's not. I think it's just that we don't spend enough time with him to really see the struggle. Every time that we are with Takeo Nomura, he is achieving success and he keeps on breaking through on another like part of this puzzle. And because of the fact that we only see his successes and his forward progress, he feels like invincible in a way that doesn't entirely work for me. It makes things feel a little bit less tense. And I say that with the like full understanding and awareness that likely he winds up dead in all of this. There's a feeling to me of the way that he's talked about that he doesn't survive everything. But that said, it's just, I don't feel a lot of concern for him when I'm around him the way that I feel concern for other characters. There's just this constant reassurance in my mind that he's going to be fine. And it's weird because I know Cormac is also going to be fine. He's the one who's commenting on all of this. So maybe it's I don't actually care about Cormac that much. I care about the people that Cormac is with more than him. And I think that might be part of it, is that Takeo doesn't have any side characters that he's like friends with that I have grown attached to. So because I am not worried about him, I need somebody that I'm concerned about their welfare around him so that there's an element of tension. But I don't have it. We have people that are like staying with him by the end of this Adachi Castle. They're like, hiding out with him. But I don't know any of them. They're just these faceless people. So I think that's really at the crux of it, is that everyone else, there's side players, and they're getting connected up with other characters that we have already met and been in their POVs and stuff, like Matilda with Marcus and Dawn. And just Takeo just feels so isolated. He almost doesn't feel like part of the story the same way. So anyway, he has finally succeeded in getting Mikiko to wake up. And he is so emotional over this. And honestly, it really was sweet. There was a sense of Snow Whitishness here, where she's like waking up after this long sleep and he's just like, oh my God, I thought I had lost you. And he says that he has missed her, and she doesn't reply. And I thought for a second that she might be like, I missed you too. Missed your throat. And then she was going to try and like grab him again. But instead, it just seems like she is really confused over where she is and what exactly has happened. And she's just adjusting to the new setting. And the factory has changed so much since the new war began. It's an architecture of necessity. Over the years, my factory senshi worked ceaselessly to rivet together a defensive shell. The outermost layers are a complicated array of junk, scraps of metal, jutting poles, crushed plastic. It forms a labyrinth built to confuse the swarms of small, wriggling akuma that constantly try to creep inside. I just find this whole thing about how everything needs to be irregular and organic in order to confuse the robots really fascinating. I am somebody who, humans just as a group, we tend to like patterns. And that's part of, there's like, I can't remember the term for it, but there is something that is a specific word to describe the fact that we see faces and everything, because human beings just look for patterns automatically. And the pattern of 2 eyes and a mouth, nose doesn't really have to be part of the equation. 2 eyes and a mouth. And we see that in a lot of things. So it's interesting to me that like the robots, they have the same tendency to need patterns to make sense of things, but it's just a very different need than ours. And yet we exhibit some of the same, it's just, I don't know, I found that compelling. So monstrous steel beams line the ceiling like the rib cage of a whale. They were built to stop the greater Akuma, like the talking one that died here at the beginning of the war. It gave me the secret to awakening Mikiko, but it also nearly destroyed my castle. The scrap metal throne was not my idea. After a few months, people began to arrive. Many millions of my countrymen were led out into the country and slaughtered. They trusted too much in the machines and went willingly to their destruction. But others came to me. The people without so much trust, those with an instinct for survival, found me naturally, and I could not turn the survivors away. They crouched on my factory floor as Akuma beat down the walls again and again. After each attack, we all worked together to defend ourselves from the next. My old workbench became a throne set atop a dais with 22 steps leading to the top. An old man became an emperor. I don't know why I found that so funny. It's just so formal. And I know that's like honestly, that's a major component in a lot of Asian culture, is a formality and a ritual to things. So it makes sense. But I just thought that was so funny. Like the idea of coming into this like really wildly built structure that is meant for defense and seeing that they've got this guy on a dais, what? So she asks him, why am I alive? And he says, I really liked this. Because the great Akuma gave you the breath of life. The Akuma thought that this meant you belonged to him, but he was wrong. You belong to no one. I set you free. I really liked this because I thought he was going to be like, but you're not his, you're mine. And he's does not do that. Thank you, Takeo. Appreciate you. And she says, there are others like me, tens of thousands. And he says, yeah, but I don't care about them. And she says, come on, basically. Like, I need to share this. The Akuma will fear what you've done. It will be afraid that more of us will awaken. It will attack at once. And indeed, I hear the first hollow thud against the outer battlements. I let go of Mikiko and look down the stairs of the dais. The factory floor has filled with concerned citizens. They stand in groups of 2 or 3, whispering to each other and politely not looking up the steps to Mikiko and me. I enjoy that especially, that, like, we're in the midst of a fucking apocalypse, but there's still a whole, like, now give them a second, let them have their privacy, like, guys, okay. Overhead, the master senshi, a massive bridge crane, has silently rolled into position over the throne. Its 2 mighty arms hang in the air, poised to defend the battle floor. Once again, we are under attack. And as he's thinking this, this is when Mikiko says, let's see. Oh, he says, I have to give myself up. The secret of your awakening must die with me. Only then will the Akuma see that we are not a threat. And she's like, no. We just got to wake everybody up before he can do anything about it. And she raises her arms and she pulls a ribbon from her hair that he says has metal in it. So I'm assuming that this behaves like an antenna. You are not the only one who knows the secret of awakening. I know it also, and I will transmit it to the world where it may be repeated again and again. If the knowledge is spread, it cannot be stamped out. She ties the metal-laced ribbon to the hanging wire. The air is rumbling from that battle raging outside. The senshi wait patiently, green intention lights wavering in the vast, gloomy room. So she begins to sing. And it's obviously like sending this sort of signal. Her song is haunting, beautiful. There are no recognizable words, but the speech patterns are unmistakable. She weaves the notes between the muffled explosions and cutting screams of bending metal. My people huddle together, but do not panic, as showers of sparks spurt from the ceiling. Chunks of debris rain down. And this, like, as this is happening, as she's singing, they get through and they get right up in her face. The intruder stands, and I see that it is a humanoid robot, heavily armed and marked by battle. The machine was once a weapon deployed by the Japan Self-Defense Forces, but that was long ago, and I see many modifications glinting in the frame of this piece of walking death. Through the destroyed patch of wall, I can see the streaks of weapons fire and fleeting shapes as they dart through the war zones. But this humanoid robot, tall and slender and elegant, stands poised as if it's waiting for something. Mikiko's song ends. Only then does the attacker move. It strides to the end of my senshi's defensive perimeter, staying just out of range. She sees the newcomer and watches it with a puzzled expression. Then she smiles. "Please," she says, voice echoing melodically, "speak out loud." The dust-coated humanoid machine speaks in a clicking, grinding voice that is difficult to understand and frightening. Identification. Arbiter-class humanoid safety and pacification robot. Notify. My squad is 12. We are under attack. We are alive. Query Emperor Nomura. Maybe join Adachi Castle? Maybe join the Tokyo Resistance? I look at Mikiko in wonder. Her song is already spreading. What does this mean? My people look at me for guidance. They do not know what to make of this former enemy who has turned up on our doorstep, but there is no time to talk to people. It takes too much concentration and is horribly inefficient. Yo, if that isn't a fucking mood, I swear to God. You know, Takeo, I haven't found you hugely relatable a lot of the time, but that line really got me. I am whistling as I reach the Arbiter robot, looking forward to the future. Adachi Castle has new friends, you see, and they will certainly need repairs. And then Cormac's commentary. Within 24 hours, the awakening spread from Adachi Ward in Tokyo across the world. Makiko's song was picked up and retransmitted from humanoid robots of all varieties across every major continent. The awakening affected only human-shaped robots, such as domestics, safety and pacification units, and related models, a tiny percentage of Archos' overall force. But with Mikiko's song began the age of freeborn robots. I'm really curious why it only affects the human-esque ones. That's the only thing about this that I was sort of like, it's not really explained that they have a capacity that the other machines don't have. So I don't know if that'll be explained eventually, but it did stand out to me, and I thought it was like sort of strange. Maybe it's just that they are more sophisticated machines, and that's all it is that they are literally more technologically advanced, and that's all. So then when we go to chapter 5, the veil lifted, we get to see the moment where one of the machines comes to consciousness. The machines came to be known as the Freeborn. The following account was provided by one such robot, a modified safety and pacification robot, who fittingly chose to call itself 902. Why is it fitting? Just because it's a model 902, I guess? It's very Star Wars-y. So we have this moment where he wakes up, evaluates where he is, engage chemical perception, 0 oxygen, trace explosives, 0 oxygen. So he's being shipped in a vacuum, I guess. It's sort of interesting. I wonder why. Engage ultrasonic ranging sensors, hermetically sealed enclosure, 8 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, no input. Engage field of vision, wide spectrum, normal function, no visible light. Engage primary thought threads, probability fields emerging, maximum probability thought thread active. Query, what is happening to me? Max prob response, life. There's something so funny about that. Just like, most likely thing? You're alive now. That's out of our calculations. That's probably the thing. Let's see. Krista says it's how their data is processed. Okay. And to make sure there's not oxidation. Oh, okay. Rust. So he's looking around inside his box, and he realizes, like, oh, this like thing that I'm looking at is me, and I'm in a box, and I was being shipped somewhere, and probably what happened is that I didn't get there. And I think he says that it's like 2 years ago. Oh no, let's see. My body was manufactured 6 years ago. Original instructions indicate my body is a safety and pacification unit, point of origin Fort Collins. 6 months ago, this platform was modified while offline. Now it is online. And my internal clock says 3 years have passed since my scheduled delivery date. So he's hearing voices, and somebody is saying, why would Rob destroy ... own armory, says a high-pitched voice. Your fucking fault ... get us killed, says a deep voice. Didn't mean to, says the high-pitched voice. Open it, says the deep voice. And I'm really curious who these people are, and if we're going to find out who they are, because it's obvious they don't know what's going on. Eventually, when 902 gets out and begins to try and interact, he just is treated like he's with Rob, despite him being like, greetings. So I wonder how long it takes before people begin to understand that they have their own thing going on. It sounds like it takes a while, which I don't blame them for at all. You know, it's really tempting to be like, oh, they just see a robot and they assume the worst. Well, fucking yes. Yes, they do. 50% of the human population is dead. Like, I don't know, maybe more than that. So let's see. Destroy it, says the deep voice. Odd. Only now, when they want to kill me, do I realize how badly I want to live. I pull my arms off my chest and brace my elbows against the back of the container. I curl my hands into tight fists. With sudden jackhammer force, I launch a punch into the container. Yeah, I mean, it's not like the way to like convince somebody that you're not trying to be threatening if you're punching the fuck out of the box you're in. I am not mad at the robot, to be clear, but I can understand why the people in the building with it are like, oh fuck. 'Cause yeah. And he knows because of like the data that he's got. First of all, he knows the specs of the box he's stored in. So he knows the precise spot to punch so that he can get through the metal, reach around and open the lid. And he hears this metallic sound. Matching the sound bite against a dictionary of Marshall samples returns a high probability match. The slide pull of a well-maintained Heckler and Koch? Is it Koch? Koch? USP 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Minimal jam probability, maximum magazine capacity 15 rounds. No ambidextrous magazine release and therefore likely wielded by a right-handed shooter. Capable of multiple high kinetic impacts resulting in probable damage to my outer casing. And he gets out and then like pulls the lid back down again as he realizes that this is actually helpful to protecting him. And I'm trying to find the spot. Oh yeah, here it is. I tear the container lid from the remaining lower hinge and orient it toward my 6 o'clock. Behind my shield, I stand up and look around. There is something so funny to me about the idea of him being like, all right, I've got my shield up. Now let me just like take it in. Above the wall is sky. It is blue and empty. Below the sky are mountains capped with snow. I find the sight of the mountains to be beautiful. This person is firing constantly at him this whole time, probably in a fucking panic. And he's just like, wow, check out those mountains. I feel really bad for this person who is just so scared and doesn't understand what the fuck is happening here. It is unfortunate that my vision sensors are clustered in my vulnerable head. I am unable to visually lock onto the attacker without putting my most delicate hardware at unnecessary risk. The humanoid form is ill-suited for evading small weapons fire. So I find this interesting that like he was offline, but now he's online because of the awakening thing. So it's not just like you had access to other humanoid robots that were also connected to the same network. She's able to wake up and activate robots that were in storage that weren't even taken, like Archos wasn't even using them at all, which I find interesting. Like, why not? What was Archos waiting for? Or was Archos simply not able to do it? I don't know. So he finally gets out, and now because like he had said earlier, he knows exactly how many bullets in this model of gun. And the female, who is the one that is shooting at him, the female lowers its emptied weapon. It makes no attempt to reload. There are no other visible threats. Engage speech synthesis. English corpus. English corpus. English body. What does that mean? English human? Greetings, I say. The female human winces when I speak. My voice synthesis is tuned for the low-frequency clicks of Rob speak. I must sound gritty compared to a human voice. Fuck you, Rob, says the human. Her small white teeth flash when she speaks. Then she spits saliva onto the ground. About 1/2 ounce. Fascinating. Are we enemies? I ask, cocking my head to indicate that I am curious. I take 1 step forward. My reflex avoidance thread seeks priority control. Approved. My torso jerks 6 inches to the right, and my left hand cuts through the air to intercept and catch the empty gun flying towards my face. There's something about the my instincts want to kick in. Okay, I guess I'll let them do that. Wouldn't it be nice if we could take a moment to approve, if our processing power was fast enough to recognize that was happening? And when he looks up, she's just fucking booking it. Flat out sprint to get away from him. About 10 miles per hour. Slow. Its long brown hair streaks behind it. 10 miles per hour. This bitch is doing a 6-minute mile. And he's just like, shut up, dude. You know what? I found that more insulting than anything. I hate you. How dare. How dare. This bitch is a fucking track star. Shut up. So he goes and gets some clothing that he has found. I pull the half-buried garments out of the ground, then shake the dirt and bones out of them. No, you didn't find clothes. You found bodies, and you took the clothes, but he doesn't see it that way. Ouch. And this is when he finds the other 2 buried containers and realizes that there are a couple of other robots that are still locked up. And he helps them to get out, and they announce themselves and who they are and where they are coming from. A bronze 611 hoplite and dust-colored 333 warden. My squad. Awaken, brothers, I croak in English. Within minutes of becoming aware and free, Freeborn Squad demonstrated a grim determination to never again fall under the control of an outside entity. Feared by humans and hunted by other robots, Freeborn Squad soon found itself in a very familiar journey, a search for the architect of the new war, Archos. So Archos has a whole new enemy. Krista says, the corpus of contemporary American English is a more than 560 million word corpus of American English. It was created by Mark Davies, professor of corpus linguistics at Brigham Young University. Huh. So corpus just means the entirety of it. The body of it. I guess that makes sense. And then we have the last chapter, 6, Odyssey. And this is when we get the description of the photograph. And Cormac's commentary, I have no idea how Rob procured this photo, nor do I know who took it or for what purpose. And we get the description of them walking. I think he says, let's see, that this was taken near Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. And they're walking beside the Houdini, and there is about to be an attack, and the person in the lead, who isn't named, but I am assuming is Jack, can sense something is up and that something is about to happen. And there is a woman who's really tired and sort of leaning against the Houdini, and that when the attack begins, the Houdini will drop into a crouch to protect the humans who are behind it, because that's its training, its programming, and that will slice her face open and leave a scar that she'll have for the rest of her life. I will one day tell her that the scar only makes her look prettier, and I will mean it. And honestly, I understand that. There are certain people that you're the things that make you look like you, I don't want them gone. Why would I want that? I really do understand that. Even though I'm sure for her, she's just yeah, shut up. I would like to not be scarred, thank you. But I understand his feeling on that also. The third man from the front is taller than the rest. His helmet is cocked on his head at a funny angle, and his Adam's apple protrudes awkwardly. He's the engineer for the group, and his helmet is different from the others, sprouting an array of lenses, antennae, and more esoteric sensors. Extra tools hang from his belt. 9 minutes from now, the engineer will use a torch to cauterize a grievous wound inflicted on his best friend. His best friend will die because it takes the engineer too long to scramble back to Houdini. After the war is over, the engineer will run 5 miles a day as long as he is able for the rest of his life. During this run, he will visualize the face of his friend, and he will pump his legs again and again until the pain is nearly unbearable. Then he will push harder. And I'm like, look, I get that this is supposed to be maybe a little bit inspiring about how, like, you got to make yourself better. But also I'm like, wow, he's just driven by grief and guilt. That sucks. You know, like, God, it's tragic. In the background is a cinder block house. Its gutter hangs cockeyed from the edge of the roof, overgrown with foliage. And all of the soldiers are walking, staying close to the spider tank. None are talking. Only the leader looks ahead. The rest look varying degrees to the right, toward the camera. Nobody looks back. And it ends with the commentary, "Our squad lost 2 soldiers during the march to Alaska. By the time the ground became frozen and our enemy within striking distance, we were down to 6. And that is the end of the chapter. So, yeah, there's like, how many pages are remaining? Because we've got part 5, but they don't have page numbers. I'm assuming there's 1 episode's left. Yeah, there's 1 episode left. So, yeah, I'm really curious how this is going to go. So thank you, Krista, very much for commissioning this. And the next episode is going to be on Tuesday. So I will see you all then if you would like to join me for the finale episode. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.